welcome to Module 4 of the SPH Teaching Kitchen's online cooking series. My name is Emily, and in today's lesson we will be reviewing whole grains, what they are, why they're good for you, and how to cook a couple commonly found whole grains. Whole grains are really great for you, and I'm always encouraging people to incorporate more of them into their diets. So a good rule of thumb is to try to make at least half of the grains that you are eating whole grains. And now you might be wondering, what is a whole grain? I hear whole grain versus refined grain a lot, and I'm not sure what the difference is. So you're often going to hear about whole grains and then white or refined grains. To understand the difference between the two, you need to understand the different parts of a grain. So when we're looking at a grain, say a grain of rice, it has three parts to it: the bran, the germ, and the endosperm. The bran is the outer layer of the grain. It's what makes brown rice brown. And that is going to have fiber and B vitamins to it. The germ is packed full of nutrients. It's actually what would turn into a new plant if we were to try to plant that grain. So it's packed full of nutrients. It has healthy fats to it. It has B vitamins and E vitamins in there. And then we have the endosperm. The endosperm is the biggest part of the grain. That has carbohydrates in it and a little bit of protein. So when we have a whole grain, we have all three of those parts of the grain. When we refine grains and turn them into white grains, we are taking away the bran and the germ. So we're taking away the fiber, we're taking away the healthy fats, and those B and E vitamins, and some trace minerals as well that come with the bran and the germ. We're left with the endosperm. So we're left with just carbohydrates and a little bit of protein. And that's the main difference between a whole grain and a refined grain. So one reason why it's important to try to incorporate more whole grains into your diet is because they can help protect us from a lot of diseases. Whole grains can actually help to lower your cholesterol levels, and that can help to prevent you from getting things like heart disease. The fiber can also be beneficial for someone that may have diabetes, because that can help to balance out any carbohydrates that you're eating in a meal. Some studies have also found that eating whole grains might even help to prevent you from getting diabetes in the first place. So if you're someone that is at high risk for getting diabetes, incorporating more whole grains can help you to prevent that. In addition to possibly preventing some diseases, the fiber in whole grains is also just really good for your digestive health. These grains often do take a little bit longer to cook than our white or refined grains, so it's helpful to know how to cook them before you try buying it yourself and cooking it on your own. I'm going to show you how to make brown rice. This is probably one of the most popular types of whole grains out there. I'm also going to show you how to make something called parboiled rice. Now, parboiled rice is not technically a whole grain, but it does have a lot of the benefits of a whole grain, and it does cook a little bit differently than regular white rice. So I'll go over in a little bit more detail about parboiled rice while I'm showing you how to cook it. I'm also going to show you how to cook quinoa. So this is a grain that has become very popular in recent years, which is great because quinoa is very good for you. It has some additional benefits that I'll review in a little bit. But the popularity of it means that it's become a lot more affordable as well, because so many people want it. There's such a high demand that the price has gone down a lot on this. And then finally, I'm going to show you how to cook bulgur wheat. This may not be something that you're very familiar with, but it is actually pretty easy to find in grocery stores, and it's also very easy to cook. So with that being said, we will go ahead and get started. Most packages of brown rice will come with instructions on how to cook them on the back. They will tell you how much liquid to add and for how long to cook the rice. However, I find that these instructions aren't always the most accurate and may yield gummy, mushy rice. So I'm going to show you my preferred way to cook brown rice. Here we're going to cook 1 cup of rice. I always recommend to rinse your rice under cold running water before cooking it. This will rinse away any starches on the surface of the rice that can cause the rice to become gummy, mushy, and stick together as it cooks. Once you're done rinsing your rice, add that to a medium-sized pot. Then you will add 1.5 cups of water. This is very different than most recipes that will call for 2 cups of water per 1 cup of rice. So here we're using 1.5 cups of water for 1 cup of rice. I find that by using a little bit less water, the rice has a better texture, it's less mushy, and just in general cooks a lot better. Once everything is in your pot, give that a quick stir and then bring to a boil. Once the water is boiling, reduce your heat to low, put the lid on your pot, and then set a timer for 25 minutes. After 25 minutes, you can check on your rice. Give it a taste and see if it's soft. If it's still crunchy, you can cook it for an additional 5 to 10 minutes. If it's soft, check to see if there's any liquid at the bottom of the pot. It should all be absorbed, but if there's any additional liquid at the bottom of the pot, you can just pour that off. Put the lid on top of the pot and let it sit for 10 minutes. This will allow it to absorb any additional steam and just helps with the overall texture of the rice. After allowing the rice to steam for 10 minutes, you can remove the lid and fluff with a fork. This is now ready to serve. Parboiled rice, while not a whole grain, goes through a process of being partially cooked and it's an edible husk before being processed for eating. This process results in a rice that is higher in B vitamins, fiber, and protein than white rice. While not as nutritious as brown rice, this is a really good second option. This does cook a little bit differently than white rice as well. It's important to note that you should not rinse parboiled rice before you cook it. This can wash away any vitamins and minerals that are on the surface of the rice as a result of its processing. To cook parboiled rice, combine 1 cup of rice with 2 cups of water in a medium-sized pot. Bring this to a boil. Once the rice is boiling, reduce the heat to low, put the lid on the pot, and set a timer for 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, check on the rice. It should be soft and you should have individual grains of rice. Check to see if there's any liquid at the bottom of the pan. If your rice is done cooking, you can pour this liquid off. Put the lid back on the pan and let it steam for 5 minutes. After those 5 minutes, you can remove the lid from the pot and fluff the rice with a fork. This can be served immediately or refrigerated and stored as leftovers for a future meal. Quinoa can come in multiple colors such as white or red. It's also important to note that some brands of quinoa will come pre-washed while others will not. Quinoa has a compound on the outside of it that can be very bitter after it's cooked. So you always want to check to see if your quinoa says that it's pre-washed. If it's not, you want to rinse your quinoa under cold running water before you cook it. This brand that I'm making is pre-washed, so I'm not going to rinse it. To cook the quinoa, we will combine 1 cup of quinoa with 2 cups of water in a medium-sized pot. Give that a quick stir and then bring that to a boil. Once your water is boiling, you can put a lid on the pot, reduce the heat to low, and set a timer for 15 minutes. In addition to the many benefits of whole grains, quinoa is also a great source of protein. It's a complete protein, meaning it has all of the essential amino acids, so it's a great option for someone that does not eat meat. After 15 minutes, all of the liquid should be absorbed and the quinoa should be soft. If you look at the quinoa, each individual grain should have a light-colored curlicue on the outside of the individual grain. This is an indication that the quinoa is done cooking. Put the lid back on the pot and allow the quinoa to steam for 5 minutes. After those 5 minutes are up, you can fluff the quinoa with a fork and either serve immediately or store in the fridge for a later meal. Bulgur wheat, sometimes labeled as cracked wheat, is very easy to cook because it just has to soak in hot water. This grain is very popular in Mediterranean and Middle Eastern cuisine, but can be a great addition to any meal. This grain needs a 1-to-1 ratio of bulgur to water, meaning that we will need 1 cup of water for every 1 cup of bulgur that we want to cook. Start by boiling 1 cup of water. Once your water is boiling, you can turn off the heat, Add your bulgur and give it a quick stir. Put a lid on your pot and set a timer for 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, all of the liquid should be absorbed and the bulgur should be soft. Fluff with a fork and it's ready to serve. Thank you for joining us for Module 4 of the SBH Teaching Kitchen's online cooking series. This has been How to Cook Whole Grains, and we will see you again for the next one.